suppose that a lot of people look at the word, the role of band leader or the term band leader. Some people look at it as the star. I always looked at it as the leader. I always thought it would be a real shame to have somebody with a lot of talent and not let people hear what they could do. I'm comfortable with what I can do. I'm not too worried about that. But at the same time, the leader, there's a fine line between being the leader and the boss and friends. And you have to, sometimes you have to implement that into the scenario. The leadership is, I looked at people like, I thought Bob Wills was a great leader. He was an adequate fiddle player, a pretty good vocalist, but he was a heck of a leader. I knew a guy named Frankie Kelly out in Arkansas that played fiddle for Bob. And I also was acquainted with Leon McAuliffe, his steel player. But Frankie told me a story about Bob, and about him being the leader, that he hired a steel player. And Bob's live shows were never like his records. You never knew when he was going to call on you to play your part. And they told him, the steel players, that if Bob points his bow at you, you better do something. So the first night, the guy kept waiting and playing one of the records. Of course, the arrangement's nothing like the record. Bob points his bow, and the steel player, then Frankie said he froze. He just stood up and dumped his steel off into the floor. so Bob, after the show, he said, I ought to fire you, but I'm not going to, because you did something. So anyway, but a leader, there's a fine line in how you handle people, but there's also a time when I always try to give people a chance. And I've had some awfully good people come through in my time, and there have been a few times that I had to crack the whip, so to speak. I do have the reputation of being somebody who fired a lot of people. I didn't really fire them, I just told them not to come back. I will say I did fire one guy at the airport, but that's only because I couldn't get to him while we were on stage. But anyway, but you hate to do that. When I was with the country gentlemen, again, Charlie Waller and Bill Yates, we all had our roles, and they pretty much were happy to leave the music, the musicians up to me. And if somebody asked Charlie about a job, he said, you have to talk to Doyle. So I learned a lot of being a leader in that respect, not only there, but in the studio. But there are times when I would encourage people. I had one young fellow that had all the potential in the world, but he didn't work at it. He just would not apply himself. And I told him, I said, do you know the difference between a good fiddle player and a great fiddle player? He said, no. I said, okay, here's the difference. The great fiddle players, you don't never see them too far from their fiddle. It's either under their chin, or they're getting out of the case, or they're walking around and the case is in their hand, they're getting ready to open up the case. And they're playing all the time. And I pointed out people like Bobby Hicks and Buddy Spiker, Glenn Duncan, Stuart Duncan, guys like that, and Michael Cleveland, of course. And I said, the good fiddle players, they get their fiddle out when it's time to do the show. And if you'll be truthful with me, you haven't had your fiddle out of the case since we come in off the road the last time, have you? He said, no. I said, that's the difference. And so I always tried to be as reasonable as I could, but at the same time, you can't let people come to your band if you've got an identity, and I did. My band there was a sound there that I never let go of. Because if I allowed everybody to do whatever they wanted to do in my music, then there would have been no sound, nothing distinctive that may be different from anybody else, you know. So you can't allow that. Now, what I would do is, if I say the banjo player or the fiddle player or whatever, you know, on this instrumental, you play whatever you want to play, wear it out, go for it, I don't care, you know. But when it came to one of my records, I wanted to sound just as close to the record as I could. And so, leadership, it's not an easy thing, but I wouldn't have done it or couldn't have done it any other way. That's kind of my nature, you know. But at the same time, I try to be good to people. I don't think there's anybody that came through the band that hates me all that much.